Today we're going to do a real quick wrap repair on this car. We use the matte red as basically like a color change wrap film. It's not a printed film, it's just something that we get from 3M. It's a low gloss red. The car owner really likes it, so we're going to go ahead and repair this. This car had gotten damaged earlier this year in an incident in Wenatchee. The car's all repaired now. We're ready to put it, to get the wrap back on it. I'm going to go through a couple of steps on how to do this. Oftentimes you'll find that by buying paint, it has gotten quite a bit expensive. So now you can actually wrap a race car with whatever color you want, cheaper than what you're going to spend on paint. Also, when you tear a fender off and you go to repair it, it's a lot easier to just rewrap it than it is to scuff it, paint it. The paint materials, the time, the dry time, all that's kind of a pain in the butt. So doing a color change wrap after it's installed, just wrapping back over it and getting the car the color you want is oftentimes easier and cheaper, saves a lot of time, and ultimately it's just a better way modern times now. Before we go too far, I'm going to walk you through a couple of things to do. First off, before we wrap it, the last thing we're going to do is give this car a really good wipe down with our microfiber cloth. These cloths are really soft, except for that tag that they put on them. That tag's easy to remove. Tear it off, throw that away, and you got a nice soft rag. Also, I'm going to use this this glass cleaner. It's a really good glass cleaner. Pretty much any glass cleaner that doesn't leave any sort of a film is going to work for what you've got going on. Handprints, their race cars, oil, anything that gets on these will keep that film from sticking. So you want it as clean of a surface as possible. Also noting that the back of this car had some repairs, so I'm going to use my Scotch-Brite. I've got this soft green Scotch-Brite that I'm just going to do a real quick wipe over on it to knock all those large pieces of primer, all that debris off there, just so that I've got a nice, clean, smooth surface for my film to stick to. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to take the Scotch-Brite and we're going to hit every edge that we can that has primer on it, and we're not going to scuff any area like up here on this this B pillar, the sail panel. That is not going to be wrapped, so we don't want to sand it at all. We don't want to scuff it. We're just going to use this to knock off all these pieces, all this debris, so that it's nice and clean. Now that that's clean, we're going to give the whole thing a really good wipe down, like I said, with the glass cleaner. Make sure you clean all your edges, all your corners. Make sure you get the whole thing really good. Last thing you want is a little bit of oil left on this corner here and that wrap to start picking up. It'll get full of debris and it'll just spread from there. So make sure you get yourself a good cleaning. Now that we've got it good and clean, I'm going to wipe it down with some isopropyl alcohol. And basically, once again, this is just going to take any of that extra oil or wax or grease or anything that's on there off, so that we know we've got a good clean surface. Again, get yourself a good clean, a new microfiber cloth. Rip that tag off of there, and yeah, always start with a fresh microfiber. That way you're not trying to transfer old oil back onto the surface. Now that it's good and clean, and we know that it's nice and dry, we're ready to start wrapping. So on the car like this, because we know that we have this really massive compound curve here towards the front, that's going to be kind of a difficult area to wrap. This is a pretty easy area because it's got the one roll to it, but there's not too much stretching that needs to go. The easiest part is obviously this door, and then this quarter panel is fairly easy other than the wheel well cut out. It does have a little bit of a roll this direction, but it's mainly just up and down. So I'm going to go ahead and start in the middle. I'm going to start with the door. Typically, if you're doing a printed side wrap, you're going to hang the whole thing and do the whole side at one time. I'm not doing that. I'm using just color change film. So I'm going to start with the door, the most simple area, and then I can use my scraps to do the fender, do the quarter panel, and I waste less material this way. Like I said, with a printed wrap, you're going to do the whole side at one time. I would waste a lot of material if I was to try that with this, and because it's this color change, it really doesn't matter. So I'm going to start with the door, then I'll do the ends. Since I'm starting with the door and I don't want to waste a bunch of material, I'm going to take a couple of measurements so I know how big my piece is, and I'm going to oversize it obviously from my largest point, my longest point, I'm going to oversize it a couple inches. I'd rather throw away a couple inches than be a little bit short and have to either cover this with like a patch piece and that you see, or rip it off and start over. So I'm going to go ahead and measure this, cut myself a piece of vinyl, hang it, and proceed. Okay, I got my piece cut. I went ahead and I left it about 1.5 inches long down here at the end. And I added just a little bit to each side just so that I know I got full coverage over the panel. But basically, as long as I leave myself a little long on the top here, as I work myself down, I'm going to stretch it. So I'll have a little bit extra. If you're tight on width, make sure you get your top really good. And then as you work yourself down, you're going to stretch that. So you'll have a little bit more to play with down at the bottom. But by doing it this way, as opposed to, like a side wrap that's printed, just, having a whole piece the length of the car and going on, this is going to save a lot of material. This material comes 60 inches wide. So you can imagine this is 40, probably to the top of the door, it's 33 inches or so, 30 inches. And if you can imagine 60 inches, I would be cutting off a lot of that. And it's not wide enough to do anything with. So by, kind of changing the direction I go and by cutting these pieces out, I save a lot of material. So I'm ready to get going here. I've got the top tape down. I'm going to mark it here on the side just so that I know where I was originally, so that I know, I've got plenty of room there when I line it up. So it's marked down. Same thing at the top. I'll put a couple of marks at the top so that I know that I'm far enough this way to get the entire door top. So just mark your edges. And as soon as I do that, I'm ready to peel it back, take the paper off, set it up here, and start working myself down. Now this is low adhesion vinyl as you're applying it. As you get into it deeper, you're going to use your spreader, and as you push it in and you work the air out of it, one, it's all air release, so the air pretty much always just flows out of it. It's kind of hard to get a bubble, and if you do, you can usually work that out. Two, like I say, it is low tack, so until you actually push it down and apply it, it doesn't really stick that hard. So you can pull it back and relocate it, and as you're working yourself down, you may, because it is going to stretch to a point, you may need to pull it back and reset it, which that's common. So pay attention as I go through the time lapse on applying this, and just see it. I start at the top and I work myself down. Also, another bonus is by the time this is done, it'll have a side skirt or a rocker panel covering it up. So not saying run it short, but if your edge isn't exactly perfect, it's not that big of a deal. It will be covered up. Okay, now that we've got it pretty well attached all the way down, we need to go through and address all of our edges. You see a lot of times guys that do side wraps, they just wrap over this and they don't take the time to go through and trim all those out. I personally like to go through and cut those lines down and tuck them in, because what happens with these doors and the way the fenders overlap, they just get a bunch of grime packed in there and in that gap. And then it gets into this wrap and it starts to bubble out and it just looks trashy. So I prefer to cut all those lines really clean, tuck those in. Even if, when you cut that line, you see the back edge of that fender, you could even go through and put a little piece of red in there, whatever your body color is, or just leave it. I would rather see that than after 2 or 3 races, that thing just packed full of junk. So, you can address that a couple different ways. On these, I'm going to go ahead and trim them, tuck them in, and then when I do the fender, wrap the fender, I'll wrap over the door, and I will cut it back and tuck it in also, but let that overlap or wrap over the back side of that fender so that it's just got a nice clean edge. Luckily, when the number gets on the side, same as the other side, I'll show you that one here before we're done. When the number gets on the side, it breaks all that up and you don't notice those little spots. Had the thing just stayed red, you would absolutely notice them. But anyways, not a big deal. We're getting off subject here. I'm ready to start trimming. So here we go. Okay, tip time. When I'm doing the top of this door, because my tin work comes up underneath and it attaches up underneath the door, I still have the roll, the hem on the top of this door. So I want to get all the way over that. If you cut it off and, at like a vertically, you're going to see a little bit of that edge inside of there. So to cover that up, I roll it over. I use my finger to kind of press it in underneath, and then I lay my X-Acto knife flat and I cut it off at that angle. That way, when you get down inside there, you can't see the color difference. Well, now that we've got the door done, that's the easy part. Now we've got to move either forward or onto the rear. I think we're going to go ahead and knock out that quarter panel first. That one's the biggest pain as far as the size of it. The front's quite a bit easier. It's a bit smaller up front, but it's a pain in itself trying to get over this corner. So onto the rear. I got the quarter all fitted. It's ready to go on. Now that I've got it cut and ready to stick on, obviously my next step is to stick it on. But since I put the door on and I was leaning all over that quarter panel, when I take this off to peel the paper off, I am going to clean that quarter panel again just to make sure there's no greasy handprints or anything on it. So, yeah, coming along. Okay, that was the quarter panel. I think it turned out pretty well. You can see a little bit of the repair from before, but that's nothing. Putting a new quarter panel on is going to cost a couple $100 just for the quarter panel, not including shipping, installation, all the time. This was a quick repair. It's actually the second time this quarter panel has been repaired, but as long as they maintain the shape and they maintain their integrity, like I say, saving money is key in this sport. So. Turned out really well. Ready to knock out the front. You did see me towards the top of this use a heat gun, and what that was for, as I was rolling up around this corner, this area does have some stretch to it, so it was going to get a little bit shorter the farther we went this way, right? So it did kind of start to bunch up a little bit, but with a little bit of heat, that stuff just smooths right back out. You can stretch it and roll it back in. You could stretch this stuff quite a ways. The one thing you got to look out for when stretching is discoloration. So what will happen with this red is as you stretch it, it'll turn kind of an orange and then a yellow as it just kind of loses, it's whatever. But as long as you're not stretching it too much, shouldn't be a problem. Just, keep an eye on what you're doing. I get really close when I'm applying that just so that I can see every little thing that's going on. It's really easy to, hop over a line and create a wrinkle. So just pay attention. I try to do everything by myself because I know a lot of the racers out here, we work on all of our cars ourselves. So trying to do it all by myself just to show that you can do it, and this is how you do it if you're doing it by yourself. I hope it helps you out, but typically if you can get a friend to help you lay this stuff out, that's gonna save you a lot of headache. Okay, now we've got the front fitted, we've got the wheel well trimmed out. I did decide to trim this one out a little bit more than I did on the quarter panel because getting over this roll right here is a real pain in the ass. So just so that I can manipulate it and stretch a little bit more, I did cut that out. If I didn't, it's just going to wad up right here, and there's a good chance that I can get some wrinkles. So again, because I was all over the front of it, I'm going to take this back off, peel the backing paper off. I'm going to stick the back half of this first and work forward. Had I tried to stick the front and then work back, by the time I got to this area, I would have such a mess that it would be difficult to get this all laid out. So I'm going to lay the back first and then work my way here and then stretch it and lay it out there. But before I can do this, since I've got oil from my handprints and all this other crap on there, while I peel this backing paper off, I'm going to clean that real good again, and we should be ready to rock and roll. There you go. It's wrapped. I did see some areas on the front that I'm going to go back and clean up, but for now, this I just want to give you guys kind of an idea on how easy it was to wrap one of these things. It's cheaper than paint. It's cleaner than paint. It's easier than paint. It's the way that it's done nowadays. There's a lot of race cars that are all wrapped. Most of the Cup cars, Nationwide cars, or Xfinity, or whatever they call them, the trucks, those are all wrapped. It's just easier nowadays to do that. And then when you repair it, it's easier to repair. If you had to try to paint this and you had to mask the car and try to paint it on, then you've got overspray sticking to your Lexan windows. You've got, if you were to take this thing off, then you've got all the labor on taking it off. You have to sand it, paint it, all that crap. And then putting it back on, you may chip it or scratch it. It's just easier to do it like this. And there's a wide variety of colors. Any color you can imagine, gloss, flat, anything. It's just the way to go. And ultimately, I just wanted to put out a video that maybe you guys could learn something on, and hopefully I inspired you guys to do your own wrap or, you know, whatever. I'm ready to put the graphics on this thing. Before you know it, she'll be at the racetrack. So, like, subscribe, share to your friends. Let's move on to the next project.